Inner child wounds when pain isn't fluent in words. Friends, today I'm going to be reading a blog article. If you prefer to read it, I'll link the article in the show notes. But I obviously, as I'm reading, would add some commentaries. Here we go. People who come into therapy for the first time often get nervous for a variety of things. I always experience this. And this makes sense because spilling your heart out to a newfound stranger can be awkward. And hearing yourself talk about yourself may not be an accustomed practice for you. Many others feel doubtful, even though they have suffered much in life from not seeking support, that they need therapy in the first place. And a portion of these people find it hard to remember the story of their life, much more to narrate it to another soul. The word trauma has been a buzzword. I know you've heard it. It kind of knows what it means. You might even be able to identify someone who has gone through a traumatizing experience. The concept of trauma has expanded its definition in recent decades. It used to be that clinical trauma is reserved for an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, rape, natural disaster, war, and immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. That definition is from the APA, American Psychological Association. Now, the expansion of this definition is that the individual defines what is traumatizing to him, meaning it doesn't take a terrible event like the original definition, only terrible enough for the person to feel overwhelmed emotionally by the situation that drives his coping mechanism off the wall, unable to cope. I wonder if you're familiar with this definition. For this reason, and to avoid confusion, I'll take negative experiences that might cause you anxiety or depression that don't meet the earlier definition, the original from the APA. I'll use the word negative imprints, okay? Trauma causes negative imprints, but imprints do not necessarily come from traumatic events. I just want to separate the two. There are no small or big enough events that should invalidate your feelings. I want to make sure you hear this. In my practice, I honor your assessment of your own situation, and I attempt to separate trauma and negative imprints, not to negate your experience, that's not the point, but to validate someone's painful experience, even when they don't classify it as quote and unquote trauma. Let's talk about the hurting child. Paul Broca discovered the Broca region in the brain. That's why it's called actually the Broca region of the brain. It is said to have a vital role in generating and articulating speech. There's a book, I don't know if you guys have read this, it's called The Body Keeps the Score by Van der Kolk's. He shared from his work that when people recount traumatizing experiences under the MRI machine, that there's a decreased brain activity in the Broca's area. So remember, that's the area for speech. Studies such as these validate our practical experiences, the experience you had in the presence of an authoritative figure. Have you had that experience when somebody you feel so high in the hierarchy that's almost like you can't talk? And it is not surprising why you may have a hard time also recalling memories of your childhood, or why you seem to hang on to a plot of your story like a broken record. The hurting and often scared child is left speechless. Remember, speechless? It's almost like you become tongue-tied or lost for words. The hurting and often scared child is left speechless, not necessarily in words, but finding words to express the deep recesses of her pain. Hurting children become adults who may have processed these painful events. Not everybody who's had a traumatic experience need therapy, friends, okay? Although trauma is said to be defined by the event, actually it is your reaction wholly about that event, how you make sense of it, that will decide whether such remnants of pain will remain in you or not, whether you will digest it or not. Some hurting children may have met a caring adult to help nurse their tender wounds, or others have found an outlet of feeling that supported the metabolizing of their undigested hurt. So, friends, that actually can happen. There are many portals of healing. Fortunately, some may grow up from the hurting child to still the hurting adult. We can indeed grow in size and age, but be stuck developmentally as children. I'm sure you might have heard of this. Like, people are maybe already grown, 40s, 60s, 70s, but they're still stuck developmentally. We can indeed grow, like I said, but sometimes we're parched for the drink we were deprived of. The relief is that you are now in the position to provide a well of overflowing water to your inner child. But first, you must remember where to dig in the seemingly vast desert of barren darkness. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll talk about more than talking, more than talk therapy. In the meantime, diyan ka lang. Are Filipinos truly bilingual? We use the same language at home but speak in love languages foreign to each other, together but separated. Kamusta? I'm Roanne, licensed psychotherapist mom, immigrant twice, first generation Pinoy raising my mixed Filipino-American children in America. I found that after visiting 500 Filipino homes, I continue to be a student of the culture. In this podcast, we would be seatmates in this beautiful cultural classroom. And by the way, did I tell you I need my kaping barako straight from Batangas before each class? If you're interested in learning the deep intricacies of the Filipino culture, especially as it merged with American culture, talks about trauma-informed care and deepening your Filipino relationships across generations, which includes my fave topic, Pinoy love languages, you're in the right place. This episode is brought to you by the Story Therapy Framework that I created. It's a 10-session framework where you get to know your story, the story behind the story. You get to update your outdated story and relive a new story, the fullest expression of yourself. And if you're interested to see if this is a good fit for you, the complimentary consult link will be in the show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, it is serving you well, please share with others, and even better, leave a stellar review so others could easily find it. Help others as much as I'm hoping it's helping you. Thank you. Maraming salamat po in advance. Friends, I forgot if I even mentioned my name. This is Roanne. You are listening to the Pinoy Love Language Podcast. Thank you for hanging out with me today, talking about more than talk therapy when pain isn't fluent in words. Let me continue. The Western culture prides itself with its linguistic innovations and progress. The invention of the printing press allowed manuscripts to be repeated, circulated, and read widely by a large population. In earlier traditions, Asian cultures rely on oral storytelling, in which the story, no matter how similar it may appear, is never the same. This is because the storyteller is a breathing vessel, is a person. He's not the same yesterday and today, and so are his stories. They're never really the same. They are ever changing. The circulation of media, newspapers, and the like allowed viewers to view one thing in the same platform, in the same words. Okay, this Instagram, Facebook, those types of platform starting to pop up in your mind. Interestingly, the more we aim for fidelity of words and stories, meaning consistency, that we stay true to the original version, the more we do that, the more we trip on our words. Policing others to the correct format, the right inflection, the appropriate indentation, indignant to those who walk loosely on that tightrope, we become less forgiving of others. For the hurting child whose words have been repressed, finding a space to hear himself speak and be listened to for the first time is a well worth start to healing. The witness, be it a therapist or a trusted friend, need not trip over the consistency of his words or story. He is not in a court trial. Similar to a baby cooing for the first time, any sound is a sound that leads eventually to words and words to stories. An adult interrupting the cooing of a baby so that the baby can talk properly isn't listening well. For communication in words is not the entire story, but only a portion of it. Learn, my friends, to listen beyond the story being told verbally. In therapy, you can coo, tell stories, but be understood more than the words you utter. The words in the story you tell yourself are crucial to the type of life you choose to live and yet does not define you. You can always change your words, the order, the format. You can be inconsistent and not be labeled as a liar. This is the limit of talk therapy, the reliance on the consistency of your story. I've heard this several times where client, maybe a friend of mine who went to another therapist, would share with me that the therapist said that the child is not consistent, that they're lying. The therapist, I'm hoping, knows how to listen to stories and yet also the story beyond the story being told verbally. That is key. Therapy beyond talk therapy integrates both spoken and creative expressions of your being. The therapist is a witness with deep attunement, one who listens to your words and your silence. All are parts of the ever changing story that is you. I'm going to go to how to give voice to trauma. Repressed or hurt parts of yourself can stay in exile according to the treatment modality called internal family systems theory. In other words, just in layman's term, you can put on mask after mask on your real face until you can't recognize yourself anymore. If you still can, you lose hope that recovering your true self is possible. Most hurts may have been experienced during childhood. Of course, not all. Children are vulnerable to the temperament, whims, and value systems of their caregivers. If you get a condescending and abusive pair of caregivers, your true self might be piled up with masks and masks for your own protection. In adulthood, you may struggle with relationships, setting healthy boundaries, or even regulating your emotions. Trauma or negative imprints are deep pain undigested in your system. If food is stuck in your digestive system, the first step is to simply notice that it is. We have a term in Tagalog called empacho when something is not digested. The first way to combat that is to notice that you have something off happening in your stomach. Talking again about trauma, to deny its existence does not keep the symptoms of constipation at bay, comparing it to stomach problem. Instead, the constipation stays put, may get worse, or call out other symptom friends, like the leaky gut to catch your attention. The body can't separate from the psyche. The gift of both is it speaks in a language that aims to bring you back to balance, to health, to equilibrium. That's the gift of your body. Even if you're having some negative symptoms, take it as a symptom that your body wants to regulate, to be in balance. All you need to do, my friends, is to attune to it. Or if you can't yet, find a witness that can support you in this process. Talking about what ails you is only the beginning of your healing. So sharing your story, your stuck parts or mask that you put on for your own protection and survival are like children with their own personalities. Reasoning with the child that they shouldn't feel this way only makes them feel bad, right? And feelings are to be validated, but they're not facts. Facts are to be reasoned with, but when there is an ailing from an emotional centered, it needs to be attuned with, validated, and witnessed. Inner child wounds need tender nurturing. I always say there's always a chance for a second or a happier childhood. Therapy that includes a variety of creative expression. Look for that, art, movement, music, santre retrieves the true self under the mask when no words can. Here's my final thoughts, my friend. By the way, don't forget the framework if you're interested. It's called the story therapy. This is the framework that I created. It's a framework, again, where you get to listen to your story and you discover the story behind the story Update your outdated story and begin to practice living your best life. If you're interested, the link for a complimentary consult will be in the show notes. Final thoughts: feelings and emotions are to be felt and sat with rather than reason with. The more you reason with a child who's throwing a tantrum, the longer you will have to reckon with it. The sooner you bend down to her eye level, thinking about the child, and begin to witness her frustration. What's wrong, my child? And how it makes sense from her standpoint. Even if you don't agree with it, the sooner the tantrum is over. Unfortunately, many of us continue to psychologically tantrum about our feelings that were pushed down or was rationalized by an adult as bad or inappropriate. I wonder if you have this experience. The sooner you begin to attune to yourself, the sooner you will set yourself free. And again, it's never too late to have this experience. There are many portals to healing, and if it's therapy, it's coaching, go ahead and explore and have an adventure, my friends. But it's never too late to have a happier childhood. You deserve it. I will end here, my friends. Again, this is Roanne. Happy to serve you today. At sa uulitin, maraming salamat. Ingat!